Okay, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to next year development discourse. Next year is a public policy advisory firm. There are a number of businesses within the next year family. One of them is next year advisory that looks at governance issues. But our host today is next year SPD. And their focus is around security and conflict issues and seeking solutions to these issues. We also have Next Year Power that shares the same office with us. Today we're going to be speaking or exploring issues around fighting insecurity in Nigeria. The question that we're posing is, should Nigeria change its security architecture? One must be living in Jupiter not to know that the nation is at war, and that there is need to think through these challenges and come up with pragmatic ideas and solutions to the challenges we face. Joining us on the panel today is Lieutenant General Isaac Obiako. He is a former commander of United Nations Mission in Liberia under the appointment of the United Nations Secretary General, Kofi Annan. He was also former commander of ECOMOG Artillery Brigade in Liberia, former general officer commanding the 2nd Mechanized Division of the Nigerian Army. He's a graduate of the National War College and has an MSc degree in strategic studies. Unfortunately, from the 2nd university in Nigeria, University of Ibadan. Obviously, you know, University of Nigeria is the best university in Nigeria. He has over 21 distinguished medals and honors, including the FSS, MSS, DSS, CMH, PSC, etc., etc. He's an officer of the Federal Republic of Nigeria, OFR. He's currently a member of the Peacekeeping Training Program Advisory Board of the United Nations Institute for Training and Research, and chairman of the United Nations Board of Inquiry in Sudan. Please join me with a round of applause as we welcome General Obiako. Sir Michael Kiro, the former Inspector General of Police, was supposed to join us, but he sent his regrets this morning. And we have Group Captain Sadiq Garba Shehu, retired, who will be joining us on the panel. He's a senior research fellow at the National Defense College. He's an adjunct professor with George C. Marshall European Center for Strategic Studies in Germany on the program for terrorism and security studies. He's a former deputy head of safety and security at the African Union headquarters in Addis Ababa. He was a former chief of safety and security with the African Union Peacekeeping Mission in Mali. Please, a round of applause as we welcome Group Captain Shehu. The session will be moderated by my brother and senior friend, Charles Achodo. He is currently the Senior Special Advisor to the Honorable Minister of State Petroleum Resources, responsible for Niger Delta Affairs, and Chair of the Interministerial Technical Working Group on Niger Delta. He's a globally recognized expert on transition and security stabilization programs, covering disarmament, demobilization, and reintegration of ex-militants. He has over 20 years experience working with international organizations, such as the UNDP, World Bank, the German GIZ, USA, in very difficult places around Africa. He was in Sierra Leone during the war, Liberia during the war, Mozambique, Somalia, Ethiopia, etc., running many of the peacekeeping programs. He has seen and worked in so many of these conflict areas that we believe he has a lot to add to this conversation. Please, a round of applause as I welcome Charles Achodo. At this point, I'll hand over to Charles, who will make a quick opening remark and then take the proceedings from there. Charles.
Thank you, Patrick. I will just give an overview of how this process will play out. My approach will be to let the experts talk more and we tease out more from them. And at the end of the day, we'll leave here with some practical recommendations that will form the basis of what next should be done. We will open up the dialogue, the discussion process. They will each speak maybe for about 10 minutes on the area, in the global generally. Then I will respond to certain specific questions based on what they have touched on. Then after that, we'll now throw it open for questions that will come from the participants. So we'll make it as much as interactive as we can and tease out as much as we can from the process. I think that should be the approach. Now, we're here basically looking at fighting insecurity, the changing Nigerian security architecture, what is going on. For those of us that were born before the 60s and those born after, you will begin to look at how things have evolved over time in the country. There used to be a point where the fear was mostly armed robbers, petty criminals. We graduated to a level where it was armed robbers very intensively, especially in the 70s. We moved on from that level to where we're now having all kinds of conflicts in this country, ranging from Boko Haram challenges in the northeast, which is now becoming like our own SWAT valley. In other words, for those of you who are aware of things happening in Pakistan, there is a place called the SWAT Valley, and that's the most ungoverned space in Pakistan. And that's where you have all the Osama bin Laden and all his group hiding for years. From Boko Haram challenges, you now look at the herdsmen farmers crisis moving across the country. You look at the issues of kidnapping, we thought it used to be very specific in some areas, but now it has evolved in complexity and it has evolved in the degree of entrenchment and spread across the country. When you look at this complex mix and you now look at the low intensity conflict in the Niger Delta area, now you begin to wonder what is happening to this country. Niger Delta, Middle East, Middle Belt axis, then Northwest, Northeast. You see the spatial differentiation in terms of various forms of conflict and insecurity in the country. Now you are now forced to ask yourself the question, what is happening in our country? Is it that our security architecture has not evolved to respond to the kind of crisis and instability we're having in the country? When you ask yourself that question, then you now have to reflect that when the United Nations wants to make peace in any country, they rely on Nigeria. Most of the troop contributing force countries, Nigeria is considered to have the best. So we send out our best soldiers, we send out our best police. When it comes to police reform and reform of the justice system, you see Nigerian police people being sent there. And we succeed in making peace, we succeed in stabilizing those countries. But then in our own country, we find it very difficult doing so. So you ask yourself this question, what is happening regarding Nigerian security architecture? And I think with this background, I'm going to throw it open so that we start from the general and let him give us an idea of what he thinks is going on. And then after that, I think Shiru will start. Thank you, sir.
Thank you very much. issue is our security architecture up to the building. Is it configured to take care of our current challenges and future challenges and all sorts of insecurity phenomena that we are faced with? The truth of the matter is that we discuss some issues most times without, and we use terms on those issues without really understanding the background to the whole issue, and then of course what we have felt to them, we cannot readily define and understand. The news, the story today in Nigeria is security architecture. Security architecture, that's all. And anything that happens, we're talking of security architecture. But I want to say that fundamentally, security is at the domain of the people. To start with, the domain of the people. And I want to remind some of you who are of my age or thereabouts that yes, we have had problems in the past, but we've never had any such thing as what we are witnessing now. And the question should be, why? I want to proceed that the people have intentionally or unintentionally forgotten that they have a role to play in their security. And it's so much so that we sometimes feel that the security man has been paid, he has to do the job. And that's our mentality, really. Some of you here have security men in your houses. As far as you're concerned, you should not sleep. You should have the air conditioner, booming, working, you sleep well, and he should be there, no sleep. And if at all he sleeps, you sack him. And besides, you pay him little or nothing. That's for a start. Let me now look at what I saw. They said, we're changing the national security architecture with the solution to security. In the first instance, what is security architecture? Security architecture does not just come from the rules. It's derived after careful resolution of all those facts that are real to the nation. If I may just ask, how many of us here know the national security strategy of this country? I'm sure a lot of you don't know about it. Besides, the national security strategy comes from what? We talk of the ground law, our constitution. Yes, that we can read out either in the courts or in the legislative houses. But what is the philosophy therefrom? can now see there are basic lacuna. So I want to say that we are only adopting issues or structures just because we inherited or heard that people do such things and we are doing them. Not that we have crafted from the fundamentals, crafted what we are applying. And this, what I'm saying, does occur in various ways we do things. An architect designs a house. He brings it to the person. The person says, no. I want you to adjust it like this, do it like that. And if the architect is not ready to accept some corrections, then he loses his job. So we have a fundamental problem. So I want to, before we discuss other things that will be relevant to this issue, I want us to, as we start talking, let's start thinking of what is our responsibility as citizens to security. We see security from two lower rungs of the populace. Because truly, are we citizens? If we are not citizens, where do we belong? I think those of you who are political scientists will remember fully what how the Greeks classify. The first rung, those that try to lead yourself, self. Anything outside themselves, good. It's not good. It tries to. Anything outside the interest group, that's how we need. And basically, that's how we define issues. Lastly, before I stop this first part of the presentation, if you remember, vividly, when the Northeast unraveled, were we able to define the problem? Were we able to define it? There were very many definitions. Every interest group gave it its own definition. You can't start solving a problem when there is no understanding of what the problem is. The National Security Council that was supposed to advise the government couldn't come up with a definition of what the problem was. Some said it's political movement. Some said it's religious movement. All those things were just on the basis of interest. We are having a problem. We cannot agree that this is the definition of the problem. Then how can we solve the problem? I think I'll stop. When we all agree that we have a problem with the Security Act, then we can now further talk on how we should progressively do something. And then, of course, we'll think of what can we do in the interim. If the process of getting the right thing done will take time, what do we do in the interim to take care of this whole situation we found? Thank you.
Thank you, Sadiq.
Thank you very much, the organizers of this discourse, distinguished invited guests, ladies and gentlemen. First, Charles, I have to say that you put me in a very difficult position. In the military tradition, when the senior man talks, that's the end. There's nobody that's supposed to, but I think I have God's permission to play a supporting role in him. And I'll start straight away from where we got started, that is, there is this phrase now that is called the buzzword, national security architecture. Security architecture. I would like to throw a little light by trying to define what is that national security architecture that we are talking about. In general, the national security architecture includes the management, the decision making, the oversight structures, the national policies, strategies, and plans that are related to security. It is important to see that in this definition, when we issue our strategy, it is not just a matter for the security people. You've heard of oversight. So, the national security architecture we have in Nigeria now, there is no ANC with the advent of Boko Haram, with the advent of the farmers' hardest conflict, with the incessant kidnappings we are having, we could see it is not what we inherited since the Cold War and military regime era is not commensurate with the kind of threat we are having now. We inherited, or rather after independence, we put in place a security architecture that is designed for external aggressions only. It never envisaged internal aggressions. It was designed for conventional kinds of threats. Nigeria likely fighting Cameroon over Bakassi or things like that. It was designed for when Nigeria is fighting other countries outside and solely for the protection of Nigeria's territorial integrity. But what do we have now? What we have, certainly, while still there are dangers that may be to Nigeria's territorial integrity, the greatest danger is from homegrown, internal, unconventional, asymmetric threats. Unfortunately, the security architecture we have in place, like I said, with the benefit of Cold War military regime, is not designed to confront this modern threats. The next question I would like to ask, if we say the security architecture is not designed, and we can see it on every day, do we have a readiness crisis? And when I'm talking of readiness crisis, I'm talking of the whole security architecture, not only military, but also the police, the DSS, and other related. Is there a readiness crisis? Before I will attempt to answer that question, what do I mean by readiness? The readiness is the security forces, the Nigerian security forces, both military, paramilitary, police, and all the government of them. Are they able to do what the nation asks of them, or what the citizens ask of them? And what is that we are asking them to do? We are asking the security forces, first and foremost, to do if there is any external threat to protect Nigeria's territorial integrity. At the same time, we want them to maintain internal law and order. We want them to do emergency services. There is a flood, there is search and rescue, there is one man-made or natural disaster. We still expect these agencies, singly or jointly, to come to the aid. As presently constituted, as presently equipped, as presently trained, are they able to do the things we ask of them? I come back to say the readiness is not there for our security forces to confront these challenges. Readiness is a function of about 4 variables. First of all, you talk of the money, you talk of the equipment, you talk of the training, and also you talk of the leadership or management. And the leadership here, both internal within the security forces, and then external from oversight bodies, could it be in the executive branch, in the legislative branch, or even in the judicial branch. When we look at all these 4 factors, it is my humble opinion that we greatly lack the capacity to confront these challenges. Are there indicators that show us that we're really lagging behind. Almost all the things I measured are related to financing, but not all of them are related to financing. What is Nigeria spending? Not only on defense budgeting, but on security budgeting, because sometimes there are tendency to lay emphasis only on defense budget. I would like to enlarge the debate to what I call defense and security spending. That is what you spend on the military as a function of the defense spending, and then what you spend on the police, the DSS, the immigration, the custom, and all the other agencies. In preparing for this outing, I had a look at the Global Firepower Index 2019, just to have a comparative analysis of how well or how much is Nigeria investing in this security, which all of us agree is very important. In my research, I find that, let's even look at the years when we say the Boko Haram started, we say 2009 to now. Nigeria has not spent even 1% for any given year on defense. I'm not including security. You should look at this at the background that even international development agencies like the IMF, the World Bank, based on the premise that without security, you don't have development, they recommended that even countries that do not have security challenges should try as much as possible to spend not more than 1.5% of their GDP. What is the rationale behind this? Like I said, you have nothing if you don't have security. You don't have development, you don't have health, you don't have anything. The second reason is that security architecture is not something that you can just wake up one day and buy, a very effective one. It's something that grows over the years. It grows over the years. I always liken it to like a fire tender, a firefighting vehicle. You don't wait for the fire to start before you go and purchase the fire vehicle. You will buy the fire vehicle, and if you are lucky, God willing, you may even spend 20 years. You don't use that fire vehicle. But a good manager will always make sure that fire vehicle is serviceable and ready to go. So, from 2009 to now, Nigerian defense budget that has been put by a notable organization like Insecurity, like the World Bank, has never risen to that 1.5% for countries that don't have security challenges. At most, I think, 2009, we did something like 0.9%. This is a real paradox, because when you look at countries like Colombia that is just coming out of an insurgency, you could see as the insurgency was going, their defense spending was increasing. To really appreciate also the lapses we have to understand in any case, in our own terrain, whereas you must see that defense is the second highest expenditure in a given budget, what people tend to forget is that most of the money is not really for capital expenditure. It's for overhead costs, salaries, allowances, foreign visits, retirees like Oga and media. That's where all the money goes. Nigeria has not been tooling the security and the military forces pari passu the security challenges that have been faced. Again, drawing from the Global Firepower Index, I looked at, they said Nigeria has an estimated strength of military of 120,000. 120,000 for a population of 203 million or something like that is highly grossly inadequate. Still with respect to spending, I have emphasized that Nigeria has not spent up to 1% since this insurgency started. Surprisingly, countries like Niger, countries like Chad, countries like Cameroon, they are all spending at least 2% of their GDP on defense and security. This is very, very important. In any case, if we say the Boko Haram, even though we say it's its original problem, we have to agree about 80% is Nigeria's problem. So you expect to see Nigeria leading, but it is not there. When you look at police figures, when we look at security now, we are saying that our police are about 350 or 370,000. This is grossly inadequate, again, for our population of 203 million, and for which the United Nations has said that the ideal is to have one policeman per 450 persons, or 225 policemen per 100,000 citizens. So in all honesty, gentlemen, I was posed here, and I'm sure many questions will come, is that I want to emphasize that security architecture we inherited is not fit for purpose for the kind of challenges we are having. I also want to emphasize that we have a readiness problem. Readiness in terms of money, in terms of equipping, in terms of training, in terms of even oversight. But before I draw what needs to be done, it is clear, gentlemen, again, the General has enumerated that how many people in this room have seen the national security strategy. We have to shake away, and honestly, I have somebody from the National Security Advisor's Office is here. They are in charge. I happened to cast an ISA on the National Security by accident because they gave somebody to give his this and I saw it. But we have, again, as a throwback, I'm sorry, I'm meeting myself, as a throwback of our military era, everything is secretized. National security strategy is not supposed to be a close document, just as the counterterrorism strategy. It is something that everybody has to see. People that have interest in contributing, they contribute it. Just I think a week or 2 weeks back, they updated the last national security strategy in the NSA office. I read about it, I saw on TV, and like I said, I saw the 2014 one, there's 2019. So honest, what I want to say, if you don't enlarge people that contribute to such documents, I have told you that in my defining security strategy, policies, plans are part of it. That national security strategy should get a buy-in. There should be as wide as possible consultation so that it becomes people's document and it gets ownership from everybody. I will stop here.
Thank you, Sadiq. I think when I said the general should speak, I wasn't trying to set you up. During our informal chat, he kind of said, look, this is an open conversation and no protocol, and coming from the background and his experience in the UN. So he said, let's put everything aside, it's not everything, just have a free conversation.
That's very precious.
So from my place, will give the elders the opportunity to speak, and they speak, then the younger ones will start coming up. So I didn't want to set you up. Now, we have heard from the general. He touched a very critical issue, which is basically the role of the people, the citizens, in issues of security. He flagged on the issue of national security strategy and asked if anyone has read and understood what was there. And he went on to touch on the role of the people, and then harped a little bit on the issue of security architecture. Then Sadiq now came in and explained in more detail what we mean by security architecture. And then he went on to take the issue further, and then came to a conclusion that our national security architecture has not evolved. I think everybody agreed on that. That it has not evolved to meet the contemporary challenges security challenges we are facing. In other words, it's an outdated architecture that needs to adjust to the challenges we are facing. He went further and started drawing some analysis and comparison with other countries that are about the same size with Nigeria. And he laid out certain standards in terms of what their defense spending should be as a percentage of their GDP. He mentioned a couple of those. And while I was preparing this, I also looked at Pakistan, for instance. Pakistan is basically doing 3.14%. That's what Pakistan is doing. And when you compare that against Nigeria, look at Pakistan, the size of Nigeria, which is almost about 190-something million. They are investing about 3.something% of their GDP in defense issues and security issues. Then they also have the kind of challenges we have. terrorism, kidnapping, violent crime, all kinds of things in that neighborhood. So they're investing more than Nigeria is investing. And on the basis of that, he's coming to the conclusion that we have a structure that is outdated, we have a structure that is underfunded, we have a structure that is not responsive to the challenges we have in the country. Now, my question then follows. I will basically say, what do we do? If we recognize that the challenge is the system has not evolved, the structure we have has not evolved, and it's not substantially deep enough, it's not substantially broad enough, what do we do? Where do we go from here? What are you people proposing that we should do to update our national security architecture, to make it more effective and make it more efficient in responding to evolving national security challenges we have? Thank you, sir.
Thank you very much, Majesty. I thank Sani for what he has done, and I will take off from there. I want this discussion to be real, because we can't live here not being properly informed, and we don't have the frame of mind to think ahead. Now, I want to start with policies. I want anybody here to tell me that is satisfied with the way we implement policies. Are we policy implementers? No. Thank you very much. I think I'm bold to say that virtually all our organizations are dysfunctional. So don't be surprised that the security organizations are dysfunctional. It is in our character not to ever conceive an idea and go ahead and do something about it. That's why you get to various organizations, shared ministries, you see policies stacked for the past 50 years. We are very good at organizing committees, whatever, to craft policies. He made a statement here that's very, very informative. He said, 2014 National Security Strategy has just been reviewed. Is it what you said? Yes. Thank you very much. I want to ask, that of 1914, was it tested? Was it applied? No. Same applies with the National Defense Policy, which incidentally, I chaired the one paper on that policy, but it's yet to be promulgated, yet to be applied. The one of 2006 was never applied. Normally, it has 5 years. Or should there be some developments, you must rapidly update them to meet the contemporary issues. So that's the problem with our national security architecture. The strategy all along is dated. Even when we reviewed, we did not apply. And then, of course, things keep moving. Things don't wait for you. You have to meet up and overtake them if you want to stay on top of them. So that's where we are. What do we do now that we've defined that the security architecture we have is dysfunctional, cannot function given the contemporary issues? Should we now go back and review in big time what we already have, or we should create a new one given the contemporary issues that we have? That's a decision that should be So there are some legislative actions to be taken. There are governmental actions that to be taken to address the issues. So like I told you when we were outside there, you know, sometimes you say the wind. I say no, it's the wind. But now we have the wind to do certain things. So naturally we should recraft our national security architecture. And when we talk of security architecture, I want us to open up on it. I've hinted about it. There is no aspect of this country or people or entity, whatever it is, that is not part of the security architecture. I'll give you an example. Some 30, 40 years ago, should there be any security issue? And it's stated that the CID, Criminal Investigation Department, has stepped into it. Give it maximum 14 days, you unravel it. Why are they so effective? The people who are cultured to know that they have responsibility over their own security. So they are ready to assist institutions that have been charged with that responsibility. Are we cultured society? Are we real citizens? I think I dared in one interview I had some months ago, and I challenged and I said, we don't have more than 200 Nigerians. And nobody has come back to me to ask me what did I do. Because we still thrive on the lower jobs. You know, the trash people and the people who thrive in idiocy. We must love this country. You must love your country. If you don't love your country, you have no business with your country. Whatever your country serves, you take it. So fundamentally, we must think of policies and then have the wind or the will to implement. You don't create policies and don't do it. So we need a new security policy that will craft from which we will now create a new security architecture. And when I mean security architecture is the whole government, starting from the military, the police, the whatever, all the institutions that has to do, including legislative, including judicial, everybody is part of the structure. That's what we must do. And then for the physical organs, like the army, the armed forces, then the police, the immigration, the customs, the prisons, the civil defense, federal road safety corps, every person involved. Then of course we have to determine. We have to redefine based on the threats perception, based on the realities of the ground. We have to now craft what structure and what role should they play. And then in the process, there are what you call force or organization determinant factors. You apply them and create something that you know that will be potent, that can be applied to deal with issues. And here comes what he said about funding. I think it will be better for us to stop disturbing God the much we do, by the grace of God, by the will of God. Heaven help those who help themselves. That's fundamental. We must be realists. We must make this country what it is. This country has what was described as manifested state. We are not working, nothing functions. How can you realize your full potentials when you don't know what you're supposed to do? And for you to realize your full, you must first of all secure yourself. And when we're talking about the security architecture, we're not talking about just somebody attacking you. Everything, economy, there's security in it. Foreign policy, there's economic security in it. Everything, every aspect of our life. So we must progress them to do whatever. Now, having said all this, what can we do now? Entrenchments. I described what is called security sector reform. In that reform is either you create or reform. Nigerian police. Is it the type of police we want? Even what type of police we create? Is there anything we can reform in it? Yes, we reform. We introduce still new things. I introduce new structure. We introduce new mentality. So that people will deliver on their mandate. The Nigerian Armed Forces, the same thing. But I think somebody said, when you delegate responsibilities and you fail to give the resources, then you consign the person to failure. That's what he said. Every day we hear, we are going to give you more weapons, we're going to do this. Come on. You don't talk about it. What we want is action. So we must make sure that the structures we are going to create or reform will be such that will deliver on their goals. And then, of course, the persons. In fact, the first time, why did the structure fail? That's another question we must have asked ourselves. Why is it that when people don't do well, you cannot correct them? Why don't you deal with people? I think there's a saying, he who goes to everything goes to what? Yes, why? Why will somebody be fooling himself, doing the wrong thing, and then he still stands? Since we don't have self-esteem, nobody resigns, nobody gets out of a job, don't you use your boot and kick off the person? If not, then run. So, we need to process ourselves. We, the people talking and doing it, we must be processed. I tell somebody we are 200 million. So what? 200 million of unprocessed human beings. What can they produce? So in this thing we are looking for, we must process ourselves. Every person in Nigeria must know his responsibility in the security of this country. And he must play a role. So we'll do the security sector reform something. That may take some time. But for what we now are facing now, for us immediately to impact on the security situation now, there are some measures that should take immediately. First and foremost, we know we don't have enough men and women in our security outfits. We don't have. For the benefit of history, when the Civil War started in 1967, the whole of Nigerian armed forces that started the war was no more than 5,000. But after 30 months, how many men and women have been in Nigerian army particularly? 250,000. Men and women were mobilized. To the extent that people who left service 22 years before that, people who left the Second World War in 1945 were recalled. And those of them that were able-bodied fought. At least relieved the young ones to move forward. That's what happened. Since 10 years, Boko Haram, where are we? We're not mobilized. And how can you, with the contending problems, northwest, middle belt, northeast, south, down southwest, and southeast. Everywhere. Yes. No, peacekeeping will have lost out. We used to be number 3 or 4 in the whole world. Today we are number 42 in peacekeeping. So we're not contributing. Benin, Niger, Chad, Cameroon contribute more to UN peacekeeping now. So we are down there, but we can rise. I heard Mr. President saying we can mobilize to deal with this problem now. We need to build capacity. We need to build capability to deal with the problem. So that's what we need to do now. And stop. Let's stop talking. It's action we want. And there are actionable plans that can be put in place, and then Nigeria will be out of it. Otherwise, I don't pray for it because it's not my, how do you say it? Not my portion. It's not our portion, isn't it? If it's not our portion, let's walk towards making it. I think I'll stop thus far. Thank you.
Thank you, General. It comes again to some of the issues we're looking at. Again, in terms of numbers, Sadiq touched on issues, and Pakistan, for instance, is about 653,800 in terms of men. Okay? Nigeria is, we're counting how many thousands, and our population is closely about the same. Okay, so if they have 800 and something thousand, and Nigeria 653,000, and Nigeria has only about less than 100,000 or so, 120 or so, from what you said.
No official figures.
Okay.
Don't forget that Pakistan has a hostile relationship with a very large country.
I agree.
called India.
I agree.
Their nuclear expenditure is much more than the Nigerian.
We'll come to that. We're just saying, for a country that has 197, okay, and we are 200 million. If you compare the size of the armed forces, then you worry about certain things. That's one thing. We'll come to that. We'll come to that. There are people who will tell you today that it's not even in the size, that technology and a whole lot of things are also creating a different kind of armed force, okay? The kind of war you're also fighting will also determine the kind of recruitment you will do. If you are fighting a war where you need to take domain and occupy territory and hold it, then you need to have the manpower to make sure that happens.
If I may just also, you see, we are fighting an aspect of war. Yes, you have two options. Broadly, you have two options. One is technologically driven response. And what do I mean by this? It simply means that first and foremost, you need to garner intelligence. And you are going to use all that is technological available to do that. Then, of course, you position a very mobile force at strategic points to respond to the beacon. Yes. But if you don't have technology, what do? You take the option of inundation, which means you make troops available and inundate the area. Because insurgency, criminality thrives like fish thrives in water. Criminals, insurgents thrive in the people. Without the people, they will not survive. So these are two basic options we have. And we have to advantage, we have population, we can. And that's why I gave an example. In 30 months, you generated 250,000 to execute the war. How come in 10 years you cannot replicate that? So we need to do something. Thank you.
Okay. So we'll come to questions, we'll come to that. I just want them to exhaust some issues. We'll come, please. Sadiq, are you adding anything on this, please?
Permit me to also add my weight first before, because we are asked what are we to do. I have some propositions to give. But I just want to really underline how short we have of numbers. My boss here again spoke about eliminating the area when you are fighting counter-insurgency. This is a proven concept. In a study carried over 40 counter-insurgency operations, the experts have reduced this into almost an exact science. I say almost an exact because work can never be an exact science. In that, they brought the concept of troop density. That for you to have any chance of succeeding in finishing an insurgency quickly, you have to have a troop ratio of about 13 to 20 soldiers or police or counter-insurgent forces in total per 1,000 number of population in that area. They have seen this in over 40. Anything less than that, you will have what we have in Nigeria. You will not have enough forces to protect the threatened population, which in counter-insurgency is the success. When you make people to stay in Maiduguri or in Dikwa, that's where you have success. If you have less than that number, you cannot impose on the insurgents combat loss rate that is beyond their ability to replace. So what we have, today Nigerian Army enters Sambisa, they leave Sambisa, 1 month later, they fight Rwanda in Sambisa. They capture, why is that time the British was calling Dachi? It was captured actually. They moved, these people come back. So if you don't have this ratio of 30 to 20 soldiers per 1,000 of the local population, this is the difference with conventional warfare. Conventional warfare, you say, what is the ratio of the two forces? But in asymmetric warfare, is the number you need is related to the number of inhabitants in that area. When I did a rough calculation of the population in Adamawa, Borno, and Yobe, just the 3 most affected states, I found that we needed nothing less than 200,000 troops to really saturate this saturation that my boss is talking about. Gentlemen, I don't claim to have the official figures of Nigerian force in the Northeast, but I can say we have never massed up to 50,000 troops since we started at one time. We have not massed 50,000 troops in that place. I now move to, I was told to contribute my quota to what is going to be done. Most of the points have been taken naturally, but I'll still emphasize. He said that we don't implement policies. Sir, permit me to disagree even slightly. We don't even formulate policies. When I look at advanced armed forces, like the US, like the UK, like the other European forces, they have guidelines, they have policies, they have procedures, right from how you open a canteen in a military unit, up to how you open a military cemetery, up to how you will open a new military base. Gentlemen, we don't have that now. That is why you see the armed services opening, fronts, opening units, opening universities. Then we are talking frankly here. Yes. We are talking frankly here. You don't do that in other armed forces. You don't say because I'm the service student, I'm going to open the university in my place. It's not done. It's national money. We are complaining that the defense budget is less. But even the little that is being given, we're allowing it to be frittered away in, what do I call them, frivolos, or I can say vanities, which we don't really need. So we need to evolve policies. We don't have policies. Up to now, sir, with due respect, within the armed forces, we have documents that carry Her Majesty's Army. I've seen it. Nice. I have seen this. So the next is the point that we can cover: defense sector reform and security sector reform. defense security sector reform, for the armed forces, and then security sector reform, the larger one that involves police, immigration. Why do we need this? Again, this Boko Haram contingency, with due respect, has shown that we don't even have a clear line of chain of command. We can debate, for example, the powers that the Minister of Defense has over the armed forces. We can debate the powers that the CDS has over the service chiefs. We can debate that. When they plan the operation, we can debate who actually takes the decision for this to be done or not to be done. So we can see even a clear line of demarcation, and of course, our legislators cannot escape from blame. How many of our legislators can really hold a service chief accountable when he comes to defend his budget? Because the man either knew the difference between an anti-tank and an infantry fighting vehicle, or he has a very quality staff that will go and tell him this equipment that the Air Force wants to buy is not appropriate for the operation we're doing. What we have, the service chief enter, they dazzle the legislators, and they just say, okay, this one difficult military matter. That's what happens. Because they really don't have, I'm sorry to say, the capacity for oversight is not there. It is not there. And if there's no capacity for oversight, in all honesty, things will go wrong. Yes. Again, what do we do in the immediate listen? I have this somehow of a crazy idea. We understand now, if there is crisis in Lokoja, it's naturally the forces in Jos that will be rushed, the same tired, ill-equipped that will go and beef up Lokoja. When there's another place broken there, it's the same people you carry. So in all honesty, you are carrying through which by this, even by this discussion today, we agreed are not enough in number, not enough in equipment, not enough in trading. So what I am suggesting, I don't know how, the money that is needed to cover the neglect, which I have traced up from 2009 to date, Obasanjo's time, none of these governments have really done enough as far as equipping the armed forces to do. That is the fact. None till today, till this last budget of 2019. So what I am thinking, since the money involved is so large, we must start with the concept of model units, model military units or model police units. What do I mean? If you could have a model police unit and a model military unit in each of the 36 states, what I mean by a model, a unit that is well equipped in terms of table equipment. In the military, and I think maybe also to the police, when you say a battalion, there is a number of vehicles that the battalion is supposed to have. There's a number of tanks it is supposed to have. Let's start having that one in each. Why is that? So that we can have quick reaction in case something happens in that state. Then from there, like I said, first we cannot do this in 1 year. We need to maybe borrow from the Americans or the British of having quadrennial or triennial plans that will be carried in. And we avoid this our issue of once any government comes, all that other government did will just be thrown away and then we start. So maybe this model units would help. The final point I want to make is that, well, I think I've covered it. Please, let's prioritize. And here is a function of oversight, both the executive and the judiciary. In all honesty, I am taking with my humble background of just about 25, 26 years military experience. In all honesty, if I have my own way, some of the units, some of the projects that a military that is constrained with basic equipment doesn't have them, I will not allow such projects to go on. But we can only watch and comment and advise. We do not have executive power. I will stop here.
Thank you. The conversation is getting very, very interesting. And sometimes I feel like letting them do more of the talking while we listen. But I know some of us here have a lot of things to say and contribute. And we may open it up for people to make their contributions. You will ask your questions, you make your contributions. But before that, I would say looking at the hearing from them and reflecting on some of the issues. One of the things that has been stunning me is that when you put Nigerian soldiers out, so take for instance in Sierra Leone, the whole fighting was done by the Nigerian soldiers. And they succeeded in chasing the rebels out, defeating them, degrading them, and taking the territories. You will look at Liberia, you see the same thing happening. So you realize that it is not really that Nigerians don't have the capacity in terms of men to fight and the courage to do so. Then when you listen, you can now see where the problem is. Because while they're with the UN, all the necessary support and equipment is provided for them to do so. But here, they don't have that. Now, let's take a little bit on the questions. And I would say, ask your question. If it is coming, please be very brief about it. And let's take it up from there. The gentleman there has been raising his hand. We'll take one by one, line by line, please. Yeah.
Thank you very much. My name is Shima Fagbeho, and I've had some experience as a lawyer, as a politician, and also in professional levels, training the police because of where I work. For me, there are three things that we have to face if we want to be realistic. Sir, one of you, I think you said that the primary beginning for any security framework, and the beginning of security is intelligence. It's access to information. You know, for me, the military and the police, they've distanced themselves from the people. There is a wide gap. You've turned the people into the enemies. I remember when military people, I'm old enough to know, I'm 60 years old. When military enters power, they will say fellow Nigerians. As soon as they're in power, they will say bloody civilians. You refer to us as bloody civilians. All the human rights abuses of police and military that have been complained to, the military is always defending itself and not investigating those things. The first line of your defense are the people you are supposed to be safeguarding. Yorubas will say, Etiobanile, Etiobaloko, Eniyon. That is the fact that the king has intelligence is because of the people who give him information. When you block the relationship between those of who can give information and those you know, that relationship is gone. It's gone. The second thing is that our security architecture is over-centralized. You have 360 people speaking different languages, and your security is predicated on intelligence, and intelligence is related to languages. So how can you centralize it and expect it to work? The third thing, and is fundamental, is that we don't have a defined national interest. National interest, you see, in our constitution we say Africa shall be the centerpiece of our. What is Africa? Are we controlling the rest of Africa? We have a national interest that is ill-defined. We don't even define it. So if you don't, because every policy, development policy, security policy, any policy is derived from your national interest. You start driving a policy, you start designing a policy based on that. And finally, sir, for us to do anything about this, we have to undo some of the things we've done. There are 4 categories for you to be able to implement any policy. One is governance, that is the ability to take decisions quickly and be accountable to the people you take decisions for. 2, communication. You do security with the people, not for the people. 3, you have to be coordinated because there are multiple stakeholders. There are some people who are called identity motherhood. That is, it is when things are confused, that's when they eat. And then we have to wait for things to be confused and they will continue to. Some people are making money out of this insecurity. Because in the war front, nobody is using bank. It's all cash. The fourth thing is what we call M&E, monitoring and evaluation. And you said it yourself, you said it, sir. When we have a policy we don't review, you have a policy you don't review. At least annually, any policy that is set up must be reviewed. Are we going right? Are we not going right? What have we done? What will we do better? So until all these things are gotten together, sir, there is an issue.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. You wanted to say something? Yeah. I saw you raising up your hand. If you want, then the gentleman there.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Dr. Victor Madene. I'm a lawyer and a public political scientist. Let me make a contribution, a very short one. The problem has been well articulated. I think where the issues are is with the solution. Let me just throw in a few things. One is in the issue of security sector reform. I think that we should have a security sector reform program that is specific to Nigeria. What I'm saying is that I've had cause to look at documents and their implementation in terms of security sector reform. And there are a whole lot cosmetic to me when you relate them to Nigeria. So I think that part of the solution is that we have to redesign what is there in existence and bring it, make it autochthonous, make it homegrown, so that it can meet our own peculiar needs. Then in view of time, the second issue I want to mention, aligning with what the presidential aspirant there has said, it has to do with human security. In this day, you can't have a robust national security that has disregard for human security. The basic definition of human security is taken away from people the fear of want. So I think we have to do that. And that brings me to what you said, sir. It may require dropping all that we have. I say this with all sense of humility, being a lawyer. There's an article in the Nigerian NILD Institute of Legislative and Democratic Studies. Okay. Yeah, it looked at security. It looks at national security relationship to the Nigerian Constitution. You find out where the problem is. All the items, in fact, all the duties the Nigerian state owes to its citizens are put in Chapter 2 of the Constitution, which the law says is not justiciable. Then what it calls fundamental rights, which it says we need, are defined in a negative and made enforceable in Chapter 4. The meaning is that even when you run into trouble, the Constitution cannot save you. So I think we need to knock down what we have and break down the barrier between the government and the people. They are there for us. Let me end it here so we'll have opportunity to give you details. Thank you.
The next gentleman here, let's take from him, then we'll go to the next person. We'll come to you. I'm not for okay. There are people at the back, otherwise, there's a gentleman there.
Is it me?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. So you talked about security sector reform. And it's obvious that the Nigerian police as presently considered is a problem. It shows they cannot handle the problem that is affecting the country today. People, in that sense, have recommended state police. Do you subscribe to that? Secondly, you've been in the field. We know that the DDR and the lab area, etc., work very well. The one in Niger Delta, you cannot say it has worked perfectly well. But then my question, can you recommend DDR for Boko Haram the way it is now? Thirdly, the issue of border, the porous nature of our borders, and then the idea of using modern techniques to safeguard our borders. So if you look at GBA, Lela, Gambaru, and the rest of them, we don't have the capacity to cover these borders, and it has a lot of input in our security problems. And then finally, sir, I know that during the time of General Ejirika as the COS, the Boko Haram were confined to the Sambisa forest. Today, they're telling us in 2015 it was 16 or how many local governments that were held. Why is this so difficult for government to accept that this person has done well? Now let's tap into his intelligence. Like you, sir, we regret the DDR in Sierra Leone, in Liberia. I'm happy to meet you in person. We know that it was a very good experience and a very good operation. Why can't they tap into the experience of people like you? Instead of all these blame games, left and right, front and back. And finally, sir, I talked about citizens. Are we really citizens of this country? And it's a very simple, you are another statesman. I didn't want to say it the way I want to say it. Are we really citizens? Now, if you see a recruit now, look at his psyche, the way he will address you, you wonder whether he's interested in regime protection or the country. So you'll be wondering whether you are protecting the regime or you are protecting the country. Which comes first? Let me rest my cases.
Okay, the next question comes from the gentleman. We'll come to you.
Okay.
Then the last person, the person at the pillar there, they will let them and respond. Then we'll come for another round, please.
Yes. My name is Jose Larry. I'm a lawyer.
Lawyers are asking me the questions.
Sorry. We're very interested in security. We're actually very interested in security, but I speak as a Nigerian. Someone who loves Nigeria. I remember growing up as a child, after the Civil War, in the war-torn Southeast. I remember at the time, small arms were all over the place, were proliferated. But even then, I'm talking about maybe 1972, in my maternal grandfather's home in Oguta, okay, we still adopted the practice of leaving the door open. We didn't lock our doors. You could walk in at 2 a.m. because you couldn't keep your relatives out. Okay? You could walk in at that time. People still had a relative sense of safety. And I'm talking about after a 30-month civil war in which the people of this area had felt terrorized. Okay? They still had sufficient trust in the Nigerian state to secure them somewhat. Now, fast forward to 2019, what do we have? There's widespread insecurity. I've read some books that have described societies like Nigeria as being low-trust society. It's far worse. Let's just tell ourselves the truth. Okay? If we're going to make any impact in terms of security, I think that we have to address this issue of low trust. It seems a highfalutin conceptual issue, but in its outworkings, it's not very, very difficult to actually see how this could work. And so, when today, we don't want to accept, those of us who live in Lagos, and Boko Haram seems so far away, the only way we notice it is in the young boys and girls who have now come to join us and have become members of our families, or perhaps, for those of us who are more kind of, those who are more interested, those who give things and, support and all that. But for most Nigerians who live in Abuja or maybe Lagos, I think the conflicts in the northwest or the northeast seem very, very distant indeed. But unfortunately, as of today, I'm sorry, I'm not a politician, and this might sound political. We are far more divided than I've ever known in my life in Nigeria.
Absolutely.
Let's face facts. If we're going to move forward together as one country, those who have authority and power have to begin today, even yesterday, to take those measures that will unify us. You don't unify by speechifying alone. You have to take concrete actions that will give people the trust that you're at the top, those people at the top, believe in Nigeria. Every Nigerian has a stake in this country. Because if we continue being this divided, Somalia, or whatever you call it, will be a child's play. That's the truth. That's the truth. Let's not tell ourselves lies. Okay? And as of today, the resources, the gap in resources you are talking about, sir, okay, many of us, frankly, are unwilling to see that amount of resources diverted into what you may call an accountable whole. There's no accountability for security expenditures in Nigeria. There's none. As of today, governors continue to draw security votes that's unaccounted for. What you're talking about, for me, I'm just quaking that a military officer can actually, you know, COS or whatever you call him, can actually spend money, get National Assembly approval, and it's not really accounted for. We've seen in the past, you know, people basically stealing money. That can't continue. I had an encounter once with a very senior police officer who was supposed to be here. I'm sorry, I don't know if he's here. I'll round up. I just want to just show you a very simple thing about how unaccountable the security forces in Nigeria are. And that has to change.
Okay, thanks. Let's go to the next question at the back. We'll come to you, sir.
Good evening. My name is Ademola Lawal. I'm a retired colonel and I work with Savannah Center for Diplomacy, Democracy and Development. I just want to bring in a very small theoretical perspective into what we're talking about. Because if you want to do a national security architecture, it must be founded on certain basic things that you need to do. And I want to say that the world has changed globally. It's changed completely. The present statism as we know it was developed in the 16th century at the Westphalian Treaty, where they say the state is inviolable, the state holds monopoly of violence, and the state cannot be interfered into the non-interference into the internal affairs of the state. That was the basis for the Westphalian Treaty. And based on that, security architecture was designed to ensure these things are carried out, namely non-violability and non. Now, if you look at these three things, modern trends have changed it completely. There's no more anything like non-violability of a state. You don't even have to step into their territory before you actually invade their state. You can invade their currency, you can invade their health, you can invade anything. And no amount of army, no custom can be placed at the gate of intellectual transfers and all these kind of things. So, for the fact that that particular idea of the state is of its sovereignty of its own is no more valid. And that is why national security architecture that believes in that system cannot work. Secondly, when you talk about monopoly of weapons, it's also not valid anymore. Because, come to think of it, and my colleague Sadiq was talking about defense budget and all that, and I want to tell you that if you, the amount of damage an artillery or a tank can wrought on a citizen, no matter how much it is far, far less than what a small boy, a 14-year-old boy, will sit in a hacker room and do damage to the country completely. So again, states don't no longer hold monopoly of violence anymore. And what they use, anything can be weaponized. Food is weaponized. Go to supermarket and buy whatever. You can weaponize it to destroy so many things. So I think that the basic thing about it all is that non-state actors have become more prominent in the security nature of every nation. It's not just Nigeria, it's all across the world. That non-state actors have become more and more active. You recall that a president was attacked by a drone, even where you had soldiers, police, everywhere on the parade where he was addressing people and all the rest of them. It took just a small boy with about $5,000 drone to fly into that premises, and of course, can rifle do anything about it, and they've struck at the podium of that president. What I'm saying is that non-state actors have become more active in all this, and therefore, if you want to design a national security architecture, non-state actors must play a prominent role. In doing so, you reduce the defense budget, you are able to promote citizenship, because citizens, like it's rightly been mentioned here, who is a citizen? Even this citizen you are not treating. And that citizen can weaponize. If a citizen is not treated, he weaponizes. Therefore, the ground norm and basic foundation for national security architecture must begin with the citizen.
Thank you.
That citizen must have all it takes. Thank you very much.
Let's take those from the back. Then we'll answer. Then after that, we'll come out. Tell them. Yes. Yes, the gentleman there.
Hello, good evening, gentlemen. My name is Ife. I'm from the LESG Public Policy Intelligence and Reform Management. I have two questions. It was said a few months ago that there are too many uniforms on the road. How there are several security forces that seem to do the same thing. How can we address that? The second question is what the general said, where security is everyone's responsibility, and how the sector has become mostly public, state money. So how can the private sector be involved? These are my questions. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Let me give room for the generals, and Sadiq to pick up and respond to one of the few questions. Then after that, we'll continue. Sadiq.
Okay. This time, start.
Get it started.
Well, I will, since I've been given the option of starting, I'll do the easy ones and do the difficult ones. Two questions. Actually, I'm going to say what my interest, because I think I may be able to attack it. Somebody asked about DDR for Boko Haram. Now, I happen to work for a project that was working with all these ex-Boko Haram people that have been trained in my country. In all honesty, you are raising a very valid dilemma, not only for policymakers, even for societies in the Northeast, where some of the Boko Haram people really originated. But again, like everything, you know, this kind of insurgency or projects have happened somewhere else. What does common practice tell us? The difficulty with an internal conflict that we're having in this Boko Haram is the fact that these are Nigerian citizens, killing Nigerian citizens, going against the Nigerian government. There are people with family ties, with historical ties to certain families or to certain places. It would have been an easy thing if Nigeria was fighting Cameroon. After the ceasefire, you tell all the Cameroonians in Nigeria, leave and go back to your country. They tell all the Nigerians there, leave and go back to your country. However, you don't have that comfort in an internal armed conflict. I will be rhetorical and ask, supposing we say we not even look at this DDR or amnesty, whatever I want to call it, it's a form of amnesty. What do you do with these people? Under international law, you can kill any Boko Haram member that dies fighting or attacking you. But still under international law, once you arrest that person, or even he says, I surrender, if he fires and finishes his bullet and then drop his weapon, you're not supposed to fire him. And these are laws that Nigeria has signed. Nigeria signed the Geneva Convention first week of independence, 1960. And we pride ourselves. I'm not saying it is right or wrong, I'm not making that judgment call, but that is the reality. So once you have a Boko Haram member who didn't die in combat, in all honesty, I think you have a problem in your hands, because you cannot kill him. And again, looking at counterinsurgencies, from the latest one we like to compare, I was in Colombia, they always end with one kind of amnesty, DDR, or other. And even international humanitarian law, although armed conflict, has made provision for declaring amnesty. With the proviso, there are crimes that are called grave offenses or grave crimes. Like if you could identify like this person was actually the one that attacked one family and annihilated them, that international law does not allow the government to give amnesty for that. But after everything, this has to be brought. This people cannot be taken to another country. Some said, yes, there are mistakes. I cannot swear to you that the ones that went through the Gombe, that they will not go back to their crime. Nobody can swear about that. So the only problem I have with the problem is that This is what happens in all other districts. Colombia ended with about 70,000, I think, SFARC members that were, giving support and giving pardon and everything. You can't send them out. However, there needs to be more vigilance in this Operation Safe Corridor that is happening and other agencies. I think even the prison services, they are also holding some. Again, this is our disjointed nature of our district. Even Borno State, they are doing their own level DDR. The one that is acknowledged is the one in Bombay, the Operation Safe Corridor. The prisons are doing their own. So there needs to be synergy. There needs to be, almost everything the way woman has helped us. They have gone into it. There's no fail-safe way of saying this ex-Boko Haram member, I have put him inside one scanner, I am completely 100% sure that he will not carry arms again. There's no, but then there are tools, there are ways that could reduce the risk of not having those ones that have tendency of going back. So in all honesty, it's a dilemma. I'm not going to answer your question, but I am telling you that once you catch a Boko Haram who is not dead, you capture him is under your district is what is called in French or the combat. Either he's injured or he has surrendered. There's really nothing you can do to him. You can't kill him. And if we go back, what was the genesis? Not excusing anything.
Thank you very much.
What was the genesis of the Boko Haram? Mohammed, if you are a decent man, if you are a man, there's no way, since the police have arrested Mohammed Yusuf live, in all honesty, you can't come and shoot him down after that. So I have not answered your question, but I've attended to. Yes. My learned colleague here, I'm not a lawyer, he spoke about security board. What is that escaped me? We are talking that the main security defense, the budget is not enough. But we have massive amounts of money going unaccounted for in the name of security boards. I saw one board analysis, I think by Amnesty International, why they said the amount of money being spent on security boards is even greater than the Nigerian Army budget. I read that report. And let's be honest, we all have state governors. What is the security board? It is something, it is not. Even to buy a birthday gift can be used for security board. So we have these security challenges and we have this large chunk of money going down the drain. I don't know what the solution is going to be. The last one I want to, there is a lady that said there are too many firearms. Am I right? Yeah? The lady by this side. Is it too many forces on the ground? Too many, exactly. Too many uniforms. We must remember that again, in all honesty, in this security sector of gentlemen, I am challenging all the policy makers here, all the think tanks. Let's think. Since we are saying police is less, military is less, all these other agencies, why don't you turn them to police? I've been asking myself. Why don't you turn civil defense, road safety? Why don't you turn them into police? At least they will have some basic training, some discipline is in them. Why don't you? I don't see how we just escaped having what is the other one? Fiscal. So honest, we have too many, and I think there's, and again, not only that, so many multiple chains of command. It's all part of the problem. We had the last IG police who deliberately refused to subsume himself under the Minister of Interior Affairs. And in all honesty, I felt very awkward when this one came and the minister was on live saying that, I congratulate you, you have agreed to submit on the police. So I said, is it by agreement? Submit to, so that would say the next IGP must say that I'm not under, no. Tell me that I will stop here.
Very interesting.
Well, let me start with what the moderator, he made a comment before we started this round, and he talked about Nigerian armed forces and performances outside. Yes, wonderful things, indeed. But let me give you a snippet of the history of Nigerian armed forces. When the war ended, we were still in the process of receiving equipment. And I can assure you that in the 70s, we were the best. Indeed, in my corps, I belong to the Corps of Artillery, we were even superior to the Royal Artillery of UK in terms of armament, of course, equipment, and we were professionals, trained everywhere in the world. We continued on that strand, and Shehu Shagari administration added more equipment. The fact was that as we are receiving equipment capability, we were equally improving on our capacity because people are trained, well trained. That was the era where soldiers were sent overseas to do courses and whatever, to be proficient in the tools they were not handling. And for those of you who have been following the military in the 80s, you remember that Buhari on the Diago in 1984 called out the armed forces for an exercise called Operation Sea Dog. It was a wonderful exercise. We tried our amphibious and naval capabilities and capacity. It was good, except for some few things which they took note of to make sure they did the best for us. In 1985, we were in Hammer, Iron Hammer, Operation Iron Hammer. We tried out the armored corps, the infantry, the weapons, the vehicles, and the we were the best of ourselves. Then what happened? From 1985, after the change of government, we commenced sliding downwards. Indeed, if you remember that when Buhari was GOC to our division, we were almost riding into Jamena when the Chadian rebels crossed over the boundary, seized some territories in Nigeria. We rolled them back. If not for stopping him, we would have taken in Jamena. We had the capability, we had the capacity. So we had these two things. And all our guns, all our vehicles, everything we had were oiled and fine. The men and women were trained, they were all professionals. Somehow, from 1985 onwards, went on the downside. We couldn't train as much. We couldn't access training overseas. People were discharging. Who fought the war? We were leaving. I knew wars were coming, but correspondingly, they were not getting the type of training and exposure. This continued until the opportunity for us to teach ourselves the rules. We went to Liberia. Indeed, Liberia and Sierra Leone was where we exhausted our capacities and capabilities. So what happened? By the turn of the century, Nigerian armed forces has lost its ability. When I'm talking of armed forces, the Navy was such, we had what I would call an armada. We had ships, and all ships were, seaworthy. You could imagine where a commanding officer would take a ship from Lagos to Port Harcourt and remain in Port Harcourt waters for 1 month training before going back to Lagos. Our aircrafts were there, the MiGs were there, L-29s, all of them were flying. Now, with depreciation in grants for training, for pool, that's petroleum oil and lubricants and everything. These things were not being worked. And so they started going down. And then went to Liberia, the attrition of war, there was no corresponding revenue rate. And that reflected when we were in Liberia, we were not meeting the MOU on COE, contingent on agreements. We couldn't. I was forced to run Liberia in 2006. I had the displeasure of signing letters of displeasure. Yes, double displeasures. That's all it is. So, the truth of it is that by 2009, when Boko Haram erupted, Nigerian armed forces was down. So we have lost the glory. We lost just news of which of us we have it. So that is fundamentally a fact that made us incapable. Because if we had those capabilities and capacity in 2009, therefore, we wouldn't have been talking about us. Because if you remember, we had other incidents of corruption in Nigeria. All of the Syria and rest of them looked probably. There were others with internal things where the armed forces went in and quickly cleaned out. So that's where it is. That's the issue. The next thing is about, he talked about national interest. I can't agree more with you. This country has never ever defined its national interest. I tell you this, I'm good. We have never ever defined it. And let me even tell you, I'm sorry to say this, but I have to say it now. Have we ever conjectured to build a nation? Right from 1914. We never conjectured. Our so-called leaders, did they think of building a nation called Nigeria? No, please. They never. Because I will tell you, there are other countries. A country like Indonesia was colonized for 350 years. And when they got out in 1945, the President Sukarno was, one of the founders of non-aligned movement and rest of them. He was an outgoing president. He ignored the problems of his people. And if you know the geography of Indonesia, and every time you know that what you say is a problem in Nigeria is no problem. They have the largest linguistic group in the world. They have races. Here we are the same people. There you have the blacks, you have the Mongolian, you have the Indians, you have the Arabs, and then you have the Malays. They have different, spread within 3 time zones, from Sumatra to Irian. 3 time zones in more than 7,000 islands out of 18,000 islands of the country. They have all the religions in the world. But the government recognized 5. Islam, Christian Catholic, Christian Protestant, Hindu, and Buddhism. But you know what? With all those divisions and all whatnot, leadership took care of them. Indonesia, as of today, is the largest Muslim nation in the world. But it's not an Islamic state, republic. It is what do they call it? Yes. I want any Muslim who goes to Mecca to tell us how he finds Indonesian contingent in Mecca. They are the largest contingent every house. They send more than 1.5 million people. The most upright, the most disciplined, everything. They know the leadership made sure they had a common philosophy that transcended all their divisions. So we are talking of 300 languages in Nigeria. They are talking of 600 or more languages and tribes. They determined their interest. And let me tell you one that will get you annoyed. I'm sorry, so control yourself. Indonesia has oil and gas, like us. But they decided not to depend on the oil and gas, but to depend on what? Palm. Which they came here in the 60s to learn about. They are amongst the G20. 20 most industrialized countries in the world. When did they start that journey? 1966. Under Suharto. The leadership. They knew what they wanted. And they galvanized themselves. And got somebody who wrote the blueprint. And the person who wrote the blueprint became the Minister of Science and Technology for 25 years. Non-stop. Because that was what he demanded. I'll give you the blueprint, but I'll implement it. They said, go ahead, implement it. They joined the industrialized world in 1993. I was there in 1988 when they exported their first syringes, medical syringes, to Nigeria. Leadership. We can do it if we are ready to do it. So we don't have any interest. I think probably we can now define it properly. Because if we know what our interest is, then we can't be fooling ourselves with Nigeria, Africa being the centerpiece. Now, about SSR we talked about. You see, forget about our templates. You have to define what you want to perform. It should be your own, your own menu. You know, because besides this, like the interest and rest of it, you see, national philosophy we don't have. Then, of course, there are policies that should derive from the grand strategy. Is not there. You know, we like making policies from the air, hanging the balloon. That's what we are doing. So there's no main source, or even the grand norm. Who said about the Constitution? Thank you. You can see that the so-called Constitution is not a constitution of the people. It's just a document prepared and then presented by the military. Yes. There's no doubt about it. But don't forget, the military only failed in sub-Saharan Africa. Thank you. That's true. Check it out. Now, somebody talked about state police, whether I support it. Well, by all means, I support it. I support it. We had it before. Did they say it didn't work? You are practicing democracy. But it looks as if what you are practicing is demon is crazy. Not democracy like the Americans. Because in America, you have institutional police, you have local government police, you have state, county police. Yes. And there are parameters. Everyone knows where it reaches. So there's nothing wrong about it. People are saying the governors will take, don't they have legislative houses? If they don't want to do it well, it's their own cup of tea. So there's no, we need it, I'm sure of it. But one thing is, let them work out the modality. Let them let it be founded in law.
Yes.
Whatever they are going to do. So that it will be streamlined, because most times that's why we just collide in terrible overlaps. No, it doesn't make sense. About citizen, I think I've spoken about citizen. I think individually we should ask ourselves, am I a citizen? Because if you're a citizen, then you must think about your responsibilities as a citizen. Are you performing? That's another problem. And it's not the fault of the masses now. When we were growing up, we had some bit of training, both from home and at school. We are told how to behave. We are told what is bad. We are told what is good. And the philosophy there was, I won't do anything that is going to tarnish the image of my family. Now, the families would say, go and rob, bring the money. People are saying no security problem in Abuja. There is serious one. One chance. One chance. Those of you, particularly ladies, one chance is the real thing now. You get into a taxi, it's not more 2 persons, 3 persons taxi. Even the driver alone. There's a lady they just robbed some people. So, there are problems. Now, about unity. Unity is a responsibility of leadership. Unity, it is the leaders who must. You see, we are too rhetoric in understanding. What brings us together is greater than what puts us aside. That is just rhetoric. Those things that is common to us, what I think it's called a common patrimony or whatever. How have we articulated it to the extent that the citizens have imbibed it? Let's take a look at what happened some years ago. It's not wonderful, but at least we have an inkling into it. In 1984, when war against the nation was introduced, what was the impact? That was the first time Nigerians started queuing. This queue culture that we stop in the bus stop and queue, that was the first time we started it. Before then, we just behaved like animals. When the bus stops, all of us will. Even at the airport, that's how we rush to the plane. As if we don't have seat numbers. That was the mentality. So, there is a requirement that leadership. Can you hear me there? Yes. So there is the fundamental necessity that leadership must articulate how best to bring Nigerians together, so that people will have confidence in leadership. If a follower that is supported does not have confidence in the person leading him or her, then of course he can't put in his best. Some of us have survived wars because our soldiers said, "Sir, you wait here, we shall find out what's happening, sir. You wait here." I had an experience that was mind-boggling. I was moving as a young officer, and suddenly my sergeant tracked me down. And he made a comment. I'm not going to say the comment. I paused. How could this man have the audacity to hold me down? I just told others to stop. He made the comment he made, which till tomorrow still the sounds in my ear. But I had been brought up to listen, to hear, to see reason when people talk. So I paused. Not quite 5 minutes, we stopped. There was an explosion in front of us. Had we continued walking, that explosion would have intercepted us. That is it. He knew. For this point, at this point, I must help my boss. He has been good to me. And he stopped. And I thanked him profusely after that. So, it is. We need honest, focused, visionary, and then, of course, leaders with character. Leaders with what? Character. No character, no leadership. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I've been told. Questions. I'm told that we have run out of time. I am told we have run out of time. So that's hello.
Can we just do it in 2 minutes? Please, 2 minutes, please.
Thank you very much. Chairman, I wanted to actually raise the point about whether we have actually historicized the security problems of this country. And I'm happy that in general, look at try to trace the history of the military in Nigeria. But the other thing is the psychology or the sociology of insecurity, which is that now when we started with trying to go into agreement with insurgents in the Niger Delta, have we actually interrogated this process or the decision, which has now led to the mushrooming of insurgency in Nigeria? I believe that the approach that was used, I think it was by the presidency of Gerald, is what has probably also informed the behaviors of some of the groups that are mushrooming, these days. And it may not be that it went to south northeast, it's now spreading to northwest, but that other groups are also just bidding their time before they also resurface. I think that issue should be looked at.
Thank you. My name is Lucy Abalon. I make this brief because we don't have time. My comment is in relation to the narrative of cultured citizen. And I'd like to flip it that we should actually also be looking at the narrative of the cultural security providers. So, the very basics of professionalism. If you take a job, if you accept a job in any organization, any decent client, you don't say because the salary is not good enough or it's not well funded that you're not professional. You don't do that. As long as you've accepted the job, you have a duty to be professional in that job. When you get tired of it, you can move on, or you just going to accept it. So back to the security operatives. If we say that intelligence is really important and we need the people to ensure that we have proper security, then you have to treat them well. We have a situation where it seems that our security providers, police to be precise, are satisfied with just getting suspects. As long as they can come and the PRO can say on screen that we have suspects, that's fine. And so for that, anybody is a suspect. Quickly, I'll share an experience of someone who committed suicide. And in the process of so doing, some young doctor tried to help. And the police came on board and they arrested this young man. This man went through hell. And he was in police custody. Were it not for the camera, CCTV that was there, he could have just been found that he would have suspects. When it was clear to a very average person that he was not. So just to say that the very basics of treating people properly, so that we can actually help. So we don't have enough funding for security, yes. But if you treat the average citizen well, if you're a cultural security provider, then you get cultural Nigerian citizens. Thank you.
We are closing. We've run out of time. I will say thank you, and we'll let Patrick do the closing of the event. But to touch slightly on what the gentleman spoke about the DPR in the Boko Haram. Yes. No. It is a little bit A typical DDR process will run with a clearly defined political framework. If you don't have where you've signed an agreement, negotiated a political resolution of the conflict, it doesn't make sense doing DDR. You don't do DDR when the conflict is ongoing, because you disarm, demobilize, and bring the people out, you run the risk of them going back, and that becomes a problem. And that's the challenge we have with the Northeast DDR process. If you go to the Niger Delta one, there was a clearly defined agreement and understanding. They stopped cessation of hostility, and after the cessation of hostility, then they now started doing the DDR. I just want to clarify that particular issue. I will now hand over to Patrick to basically sum up the event. Thank you.
Please, a round of applause for the panelists. And also for you, for making time to join us. We're particularly grateful to the panelists, Lieutenant General Odiako, Group Captain Shiru Garba, retired, and Charles Achodo, for joining us this evening to begin the process of unpacking this very difficult question. We never thought that we were going to exhaust it in just 2 hours, but we thought that would trigger the discussion and then continue this discussion in subsequent series. What is clear to us from what we've heard this evening is that the security architecture we have to deal with the contemporary issues we have today might not be adequate, and that the solutions might not be straightforward, because we live in a rapidly evolving world where non-state actors could even be more powerful than the external aggression we were set up to fight. So on that note, I thank you for joining us. We're a bit particular about starting events on time and ending on time. So although we know that the discussions have not been exhausted, we welcome you to stay back and continue the discussions. But we'd really like to end at this point. And please stay tuned for subsequent events, and we hope you'll find time to join us. Thank you very much.